Hey, good morning, everyone. TIF. I thought I would do something a little different this week and give you a preview of what the sermon is about tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to Sunday as always, and I hope you are too, so I'll see you tomorrow at 4:30. But in preparation for tomorrow's sermon, I want you to read Acts chapter 8, verses 1 through 25. Last week, of course, we talked about the stoning of Stephen and what it means to suffer. This week, we're going to be looking at what happens when the church is shattered, so to speak, and sent out. And we're going to see two things. We'll see Philip going down into Samaria, and then an event that happens while he's there with this particular person named Simon the magician. So the sermon, the theme of the sermon is this: we need to get the gospel right, and then we need to get it out. So we need to get the gospel right, and we need to get it out. You'll hear me say that a couple times tomorrow night in the sermon. There's 4 points to the sermon, and this is what I hope you'll look for as you read the text. The first point is this, that first of all, the church is scattered. You know, think about what it means to be scattered, like when something happens and people scatter out, or even shattered, like when you shatter a mirror or shatter glass and it just goes everywhere. And this is what happens when persecution comes to the church. The church, people of the church are scattered all over the area, and what happens is the gospel then goes out. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk about what it means for TIF as God uses us out in the world. The second point is this, that the gospel is for the city. Philip goes to Samaria, and from this point forward in the book of Acts, what we have is the gospel going to cities. Philip and Peter and Paul and the apostles start going to the major cities and sharing the gospel, and from those cities, then the gospel filters out into all the other places of the known world. And so the gospel is particularly powerful in the city. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that means, particularly for Taichung. The third thing that we're going to talk about is that the gospel is incarnate. That word means to be brought near. We use it to talk about Jesus a lot because Jesus was made incarnate in the flesh. And so what we're saying is that we're taking the gospel in the flesh out into the world. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and making the gospel word and deed. And that's what Philip does. He brings the gospel in word and in deed, and the gospel brings about a new community because people get baptized as Philip preaches, and they're brought into the church. And the gospel does something wonderful that actually Philip doesn't even preach about. It just happens as a result of the gospel. There's this wonderful racial, cultural reconciliation. Remember, the Jews hated the Samaritans. They were two very divided people groups. And all of a sudden now, the Jews and the Samaritans are together. They're brought together by the power of the gospel. And the text tells us there was joy in the city as a result. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means. Finally, we'll look at this, that the gospel is mission. It's the gospel. What is the gospel? What does it mean, and what does it... So I guess here's the idea. How do we live a life like this? And that's what the sermon is about. I'm not going to share that. You'll have to come tomorrow to find out. So anyway, I hope to see you tomorrow. Remember, we'll be celebrating the Lord's Supper. It's the first Sunday of the month. So please prepare your hearts for that. And I hope you'll stay afterwards for our evangelism training, which is going to be the next 4 Sundays in a row after church. Very, very important for all of us to think about. How do we go out and share the gospel? Let's get it right, and let's get it out. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.